garden. There they waited, and when the snake came forth, Gilgamesh swung his axe and chopped it in two. In terror, the indigo bird flew away, shrieking with its young, and Lilith howled in dismay, jumping out of her house to run back to the wilds. Then Gilgamesh and Enkidu stood around the trunk, and grasping it hard in their own arms, they literally pulled it up by the roots. They gave the tree to Ishtar for her throne and bed. Ishtar, in turn, made a sacred drum and beater from part of the roots and crown, and these she gave to Gilgamesh. With these special objects, Gilgamesh gained great power. By using the drum, he could travel to the spirit world. But instead of honoring this awesome responsibility, he abused the great power of the sacred tools. He beat on the drum to entrance young men to brawling and gaming. No one could stop him, so the people pleaded to the gods. They decided the king must be punished. So one day, while Gilgamesh was beating his drum as usual, a glowing hole opened right before him into the netherworld. Startled, he lost hold of the drum and beater, and they fell through the crack and out of sight. Cautiously, Gilgamesh reached his hand in, but he couldn't touch them. Then he put in his foot, but still they were out of reach. So he sat down by the gate of the netherworld and bitterly bemoaned his loss. Enkidu, who had been by his side all this time, now bravely offered to climb through the mysterious entrance and retrieve the shamanic tools. His hope renewed, Gilgamesh told Enkidu how to protect himself from the demons he would encounter down there. So Enkidu stepped below and out of sight, but as soon as he entered the netherworld, Enkidu ignored everything Gilgamesh had told him. And so he was assailed by the monsters and the spirits, and they would not let him go. He was held fast. Enkidu could not return to the surface. In pain and sorrow, Gilgamesh went to the great temple of Enlil in the city of Nippur. There he pleaded before the throne, quote, "Father, Enlil, my drum and beater, fell into the netherworld. I sent Enkidu to bring them up, but the demons seized him. Please let him go," unquote. But Enlil was completely unmoved. So Gilgamesh next went to the temple of kindly Sin, the moon god, in the city of Ur. But Sin, though not entirely unmoved, still did nothing. Now desperate, Gilgamesh went to the water temple of Enki, the god of wisdom, god of the deepest well, in the city of Eridu. Weeping freely, Gilgamesh again repeated his plea, and this time he was heard. You see, so in the original they would actually repeat all this stuff. That's why it would take so long. It wouldn't just rush right through the summaries. For Enki was deeply touched by the king's suffering and pain. Turning to Shamash, the wise lord said to the sun god, "Open the vent of the netherworld, that the ghost of Enkidu may arise from the darkness and tell all the ways of the underworld to his brother." Shamash gladly did as the lord of the abyss had ordered. A glowing hole magically took form right there in the room, across from where Gilgamesh was standing. And then, like a dream out of the night, Enkidu arose from the luminous orifice. When the two saw each other, they ran together and tightly embraced, kissing each other with joy. Then Gilgamesh awakened from his shamanic trance, still in his palace, still holding his drum and beater, and looking up he saw the living spirit of his dead lover standing before him in the room, next to the glowing door to the netherworld. So it had all been true, and there was Enkidu to prove it. With eyes widening, Gilgamesh reached out and again embraced his companion, though he was no longer in a body of flesh, but of spirit. After a long time, Enkidu spoke to Gilgamesh. "I have learned the wisdom of the underworld," he solemnly said, "and I have been sent back here to teach it to you, so that when you finally enter there yourself, you will already know its ways." So as Gilgamesh wore his robe of life, and with Ur-Shanabi beside him, the wise spirit of Enkidu began to teach. Enkidu now revealed that he, Gilgamesh, had been chosen for a special fate, of which this teaching was the final preparation. So Gilgamesh gladly bent his mind to his brother to learn the great secrets that were now freely revealed to him. During this time, which lasted for the rest of his life, the king became known as a sage and beneficent ruler. For the first time, he felt truly at peace with the world and at one with himself. He practiced the shaman's art and was fulfilled. Years passed before his education in the ways of the underworld were complete, but one day Gilgamesh realized his study had come to an end. So he sat down and recorded his story on these stone tablets and prepared for his death. And then, soon after, his heartbeat was stilled, and all the city of Uruk set up a dirgeful wail. A grand funeral laid his body to rest among his most treasured possessions, and his praises and achievements were sung of from that time on. After his body had died, the spirit of Gilgamesh was taken down by the dark-faced man with the paws of a lion and the talons of an eagle. He was brought to the great hall of the House of Ashes, in front of the lapis lazuli throne. There Ereshkigal looked down on him. Quote, "Here is your beloved Enkidu now to rejoin you forever," unquote, she said, pointing to the back of the hall. Gilgamesh turned to see his companion striding forward, and he eagerly ran to meet him. This time, when they embraced, they were never again parted. Then, hand in hand, Gilgamesh and Enkidu approached the throne. Quote, "Because of your love, bravery, and humility, Gilgamesh, you have been tempered and transformed into one of the wise. Now fulfill your destiny and sit upon the throne of Judge of the Netherworld," unquote. She pointed out of her hall as the door opened to reveal another palace in the dim distance. Quote, "There, at Ereshkigal, you shall reign as king over all the dead. You shall judge their fate, to be rewarded or punished for their good or bad deeds, and you shall serve as the ultimate intercessor for all your brethren shamans still alive on earth," unquote. So long at last, after many adventures, the king came to fulfill his final fate. As originally decreed by the gods, Gilgamesh and Enkidu entered their great house in the netherworld and approached its glittering lapis throne, empty and covered with dust. Next to it rested a smaller throne, also made of the dark blue stone streaked with veins of gold. Together, the men mounted the steps and sat down side by side. Then, in a sudden rush of air, the Lord Enki appeared above, carrying the crown of the netherworld. Holding it over Gilgamesh's head, the god of wisdom revealed that he was Gilgamesh's true father, not Logobanda, and he blessed Gilgamesh with all his own knowledge as he placed the luminous crown on the head of his son. From that moment on, Gilgamesh reigned in the land of the dead as his king and judge, and all who have since died have passed through his audience hall, and all who have wished for the wisdom of the underworld have bowed before his throne. Who indeed, like Gilgamesh, can boast, "I am the king"? That's a 5,500-year-old story brought back to life. That's it. That's the whole thing. Which would take days of it. Right? So I predict it to you. Even less than that. But quite interesting, huh? Especially for such an old story. Yes, go ahead and change the tape. Great. I knew that telling the tale was not going to fill up the whole opportunity to be sharing stuff with you about that. We could go right now. Joel been sitting there and hearing enough yak. Roger yacked for a while, and I'm yacked the story out here for an age, it seems. But nonetheless, you got to hear it orally. And so originally, they might not have told the whole story, of course, unless we were, maybe a well-off person who paid the singer of the story, the bard, a good amount of money for an important ceremony. They would just share a part of that, which would be an evening's kind of sort of entertainment, but not in the light way we would think of entertainment. It's a ritual meaning also to read it out or actually sing it out. At the same time, they would have done part of it. So you notice how it's a bunch of episodes put together. And that's what various of these scribes in the temple started to do. over the 1,500 years from when the first fragments were discovered around 3000 BCE to when this one particular fellow, I don't know his name, some Leki Unini, put together, I guess he was Babylonian or something, put together this version I just read you. Now what I'd like to do is as a way of beginning the exploration of understanding this story in psychological terms, I'd like to read you the first two introductory sections of my commentary on that story. The reason for having to read the story is that if I just read the commentary, I am explicitly discussing this particular version. And so if you read some other version of it, especially one that didn't incorporate an integration of the 12th tablet, it would be peculiar because I comment on this version of it in my commentary. So that's what was necessary. First of all, I could not read and share which was on the reading. Originally on the reading was just my commentary, my paper, not the story itself. You had to go out and buy some, the reader had to go out and buy some book, which was a translation of it. So but I realized that this translation goes with the commentary, and that's why I read tonight the translation. Next month we will do the bulk of the commentary on that story I just read you. But tonight we'll start out, share with you the first two sections, which will take us about 14 pages into my commentary on the story I just read to you. The commentary is called the Romance of Gilgamesh, a Jungian commentary. The first subsection here, Love and Romance in Gilgamesh, which we just heard the story. The story of Gilgamesh, the reason to read, I should let you know also, I would love to just end it right now, and you won't sit on your butts, as I mentioned. But this is, as I mentioned to you, a 60-odd page paper. And if I say it for all of it for next time, we'd never have enough time. There's not enough time to read 60-odd pages. My apologies. That's why I'm trying to squeeze in a little bit at the beginning of the paper. Each section is built so that I can actually read the first two sections tonight and actually just pick up at the third section next time, and it will seem like a pretty decent paper without next time reading the first two sections. It's interesting. So anyway, I'm going to read you the first two subsections here. Love and Romance in Gilgamesh. The story of Gilgamesh has been known of in modern times just within the last century or so. And a full and accurate translation has only been gradually built up with improved scholarship in the ancient languages, along with the recovery of an increasing proportion of the ancient Middle Eastern libraries, which were written on clay tablets and long were buried in hillocks and mounds of barren dirt. Only in recent years has a fairly complete reconstruction of the full story been possible, what I just read to you. But from the beginning, Gilgamesh could be recognized as one of the great epic heroes in literature, as well as one of the first. Indeed, as pieces of the story were placed together, it was soon apparent that many shorter tales actually made up one overarching cycle of action. A heroic quest, like the medieval romances, for example, the Grail legends, full of tragedy, pathos, irony, and redemption. Just as Parsifal, for example, fought the Red Knight and others, then went on his great search for the wondrous Grail Cup, so too Gilgamesh fought Humbaba and the Bull of Heaven, then went in search of the magic plant of immortality. As Joseph Campbell says in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, the story of Gilgamesh is one of the, quote, great tales of the elixir quest, unquote. Indeed, so clearly does this story of Gilgamesh resemble a romance of the Middle Ages, that early translators automatically assumed that Gilgamesh, like the heroes of the medieval days, also had a great, quote, romantic interest, unquote, like Guinevere or Isolde, some woman around whom romantic love must have swirled, even though no such figure was clearly apparent in the clay tablets so far uncovered. So you have to picture as they're uncovering the story, they're only finding fragments. They're uncovering these ancient libraries, and it's all falling to pieces. The books are written basically on hardened dirt, and over the thousands of years they're all falling apart, so they're just digging up pieces and fragments, and then the fragments are starting to find out there's this hero Gilgamesh, and it's sounding like this romantic lay thing like the Middle Ages, and they're going, oh, where's the tippy boo? They're actually doing this, they're actually writing like this. It's so weird, you know. So, but I'm looking closer, these scholars supposedly found her. Mua, or Rag Mua, they called her. thereby bringing the figure of Gilgamesh more in line with the heroic ideal of their own time, the second half of the 1800s. In the translation Ishtar and Isdubar of 1884, for example, by Leonidas Lacenci Hamilton, Gilgamesh and Mua not only have a major love relationship, but in the end, Gilgamesh must choose between staying with her in paradise or returning empty-handed to the ordinary world.